Looks like it's live on Kick and Twitch and YouTube and X. So let me just get the link here. Thank you all for tuning in, for watching. We're about to do a live episode here with Ryan Thompson, NHDVS advocate, and we're going to discuss very specifically the West Los Angeles VA, more importantly known as the National Soldiers Home. Ryan, if you don't mind introducing yourself and me even giving a little context to maybe even how you got into this issue before we start, that'd be amazing.
Sure. My name is Ryan Thompson. I'm an independent unpaid volunteer advocate for disabled and homeless veterans' rights, entitlements, and interests to their National Soldiers Home, which is deeds restricted federal land for the federal government to only provide permanently as a home for disabled, homeless, and unemployed veterans, which is popularly known as the West Los Angeles VA. And I'm not a veteran. I grew up next to the Soldiers Home, and I became, starting in 2019, very appalled by what I was learning about a criminal racket stealing the land there with taxpayers' money. And so have been involved with advocacy since then on an almost full-time basis. And even though that's only been about 6 years, there have been many veterans for 70 years or more that have been behind this advocacy, including some that are involved with it right now that have been at it for 36, almost 40 years. So that's my background.
Okay, amazing. And I just shared the link, by the way. If you want to share it with anyone, I sent it to you.
Oh, okay, cool.
This issue, I'm not a veteran either. It's certainly concerning as a LA native and resident, taxpayer, and someone who's personally just tried to give back in different ways. I've cared a lot about the different houseless population in different areas and learned about the VA situation, kind of when they had all those tents there, which we could go maybe more into later. I think if for the purpose of this convo is this LA Times article that came out today. And by the way, this stream that we're doing is the
And I'm
first
going to fix
one.
something really quick while you go over that. I'll be right back.
Okay. This stream is the first that we'll be doing of many. This stream, again, is focused on the West Los Angeles VA Soldiers Home. And we'll be discussing the different news that comes from it. We'll be discussing with different people. We'll be doing interviews and a lot more. And so if you have any questions, if you have any specific information that you'd like to share, we strongly encourage you to use the chat. We strongly encourage you to use the chat. If you can hear this, if you're watching, please use the chat. Please share and engage with the post. It certainly helps more people see it. And this particular issue is one that I certainly believe that with public awareness, we can solve what appears to be a lot of corruption to allow Los Angeles to remain the nation's capital of veteran homelessness here. So, Ryan, if you'd like to kind of talk about this LA Times article that we have
Sure.
here, and anything in
Yeah, and I'm
particular.
hoping that if we get some guests here that they'll start um, putting through a lot of questions, because I'm hoping that this can be as interactive as possible, just on a weekly basis or whatever, uh, answering questions and getting down to the bottom of things, just because there's so much confusing disinformation and propaganda out there that veterans' lives depend on when they're homeless. But in terms of the article here, sorry, I'm just going to bring this up because I've already annotated some stuff in it. So what we're talking about is the LA Times article from today, September 24th, 2024. LA Times article, vets are pushing for a town center on LA's VA campus. But what is it? And will it have a hotel bar? Well, I think the first indicator in this is there's a lot of oxymorons in this piece of pure propaganda here. And one of them, to set it right off the bat, is vets are pushing for a town center. What is it? Well, obviously, there's not a lot of people pushing for anything that nobody knows what it is, right? So right off the bat, that just kind of shows you this is an article to make you think about something a certain way that nobody really knows about to begin with. And overall, the gist of this LA Times piece from today is kind of a shell game. And the way it works is to, uh, it's kind of like, let's say, a magician goes in front of you with three coconut shells. And under one coconut shell is the truth, which is that developing a mega mall upwards of 450,000 square feet with a hotel and a bar for the general public at the National Soldiers Home is illegal. It's completely illegal, totally against the law. There is not even a legal basis for this to be contemplated by anyone having anything legitimately to do with this land. So that's under one shell, right? That's the truth. That's a fact. It's indisputable. And then under a second shell, you have the lie of let's build a mega mall metropolis for the general public that has a hotel inside of it and a hotel bar, I guess. And then you have a third shell, which is let's build that mega mall metropolis town center for the general public without a hotel. And the magician moves the shells around, and suddenly, when they stop, there's only two shells: the town center metropolis with the hotel, the town center metropolis without it. Which one are you cool with? And that's the whole game here. The game here is to confuse the general public into forgetting that the whole thing's illegal to begin with, and to believe that the only argument and that the only choices are between two illegal options. And both of these illegal options, no matter which one is picked, are going to kill a lot of disabled veterans with avoidable homelessness that the taxpayers are paying and have been for over 136 years to house these disabled veterans at their soldiers' home that they have earned by nothing beyond disability and their service to this country. And that's what really is at stake here. That is the choice, right? So it's the whole purpose of this is to deceive the public into forgetting about what is right and what is lawful and what is ethical and what is good and what we are spending tax money on, and to think that our only choices, once again, are which flavor of killing disabled veterans with homelessness using a criminal land misuse racket. So that's the gist of this article, and this is very similar to the same type of scheme that Doug Smith in the LA Times did with the Purple Line. And the Purple Line, just so you know, this is two subway stations, $3.2 billion of federal money already over budget to deliver all the customers for this mega mall in time for the Olympics. And the LA Times, the development, one of the problems with it is it has committed on its own to illegally destroy the National Homeless Veterans Memorial mural, which was consecrated by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs as a monument there at the National Soldiers Home, and was painted by homeless veterans who were disabled for free back in the early 90s. And today they actually drove some I-beams through that. And so the LA Times article, Doug Smith did an article about that earlier and said, hey, the argument is not about whether or not to destroy the mural. The argument is about whether or not to go with a certain artist that will create a replacement mural that these shoppers will see on their way, that kind of relegates veterans as if they're some ancient relic, like a dinosaur that used to exist on this land. So anyway, let's go through this article here. It says, developers for the VA see hundreds of units of supportive housing over ground floor retail and service establishments. Well, right there off the bat, right? These people aren't thinking a lot about what they're writing, because what they're saying here is they want it to look like veterans are behind this and they want this. But the first thing they say is developers see this, not veterans, developers, right? Developers for the VA see hundreds of units of supportive housing over ground floor retail and service establishments, right? And Senate, if I remember correctly, you have some interview stuff that you did over at the Soldiers Home when they were opening up one of these EUL affordable housing rental scheme buildings, where the Deputy Secretary of the VA, Tanya Bradshaw, and Stephen Behrman had acted like they had no idea what you're talking about, as if you're a crazy conspiracy theorist when you're talking about uh, retail and commercial on the first floor or two of these buildings, right?
That's right. Yeah, I'll have to find that footage actually, but you're absolutely right. They had no
Right. So
idea
and
about it
just
apparently.
yeah, so this is a whole other thing, right? They take truth that advocates say, that veterans say, and they go, "That's some crazy cockamamie shit. Like, how could anyone think that's true?" And then, of course, months later, they go, "Yeah, remember this? Of course, that's true." It also says many vets say the housing should go elsewhere on campus, and the center should be a consolidated retail and service district with a hotel and a bar together. All right, what veteran have any of us met that we know of that said that they want housing to be somewhere else on this good land of the National Soldiers Home, so this illegal mega mall could be built on top of it for the general public with a hotel and a bar? And then I think the question to ask ourselves is, if any of us were to actually know a veteran who wants that, that understands what this land is for, are those veterans homeless and disabled? Because that's the other gag here, right? They want everyone to think that it's just veterans, not disabled veterans, not homeless veterans, veterans, right? Because they want veterans who have a lot of money, veterans who are not disabled, veterans who are not homeless. It's a trick, right? We all hear veterans. We forget to stop and think it's about disabled and homeless veterans. And another thing I want to add on this is that this town center mega mall metropolis with the hotel and bar and the subways, um, the entire thing, this entire legal development, billions of dollars of development, is to be funded by us. It's to be funded by the federal taxpayer. Not a dime of it is being planned for this criminal racket trying to build this illegal thing to come up with. Not a dime of it. And sad to say, hundreds of millions of dollars of our tax money is already being pilfered to fund this. And believe it or not, it's coming out of the PACT Act. The PACT Act for Agent Orange and burn pit victims. If you bring up that public law, you'll see that there was an amendment made on the Senate floor right before it was to pass by Senator John Tester. And he stuck in something called Section 705 into that bill that is now a law that says they're going to take $1 billion, about $981 million out of that care for burn pit victims and Agent Orange victims. And they're going to give it to these EUL developers, enhanced use lease developers, which is another term for these folks that want to build this criminal racket that wants to build this mega mall metropolis. And there's already been, the VA reports, I think approximately $360 million that has already gone out to do this. That's a fact. So the article goes to say,
We
actually,
we put
before
on the
that,
screen, by the way, section 705. One question I want to ask you though, just for anyone listening
yeah,
that may even be hearing this for the first time. Uh, you're saying it's really for, it's not for just a veteran, but in fact a unemployed, homeless, and disabled veteran.
the
But
soldiers home, right?
the soldier's home, right? Could you speak on though that if someone says, well, that's your interpretation, like why, what makes that so, and not
Yeah,
an opinion, let's say, or even a perspective, but rather the law?
right. Yeah, that is not an interpretation. That is a deed. Actually, it's a number of deeds. And let's say if some of you have a deed to a home, you own a home, these are deeds to the United States federal government. So they're even stronger and more ironclad than that. And it's a series of deeds by landowners that owned a lot more land than where the National Soldiers Home is. And it was almost 1,000 acres. And they donated that in the late 19th century. And in the deed, it has one term and only one term, that all of that land be permanently maintained by only the federal government as only a home for disabled, unemployed, and homeless veterans. And that is a term that the United States federal government accepted without argument. And they even recorded that in the congressional record. So those deeds are laws and acts and commitments by the United States federal government. And uh, they were accepted not only with the land, but there was also a vast reservoir of water to provide all the water for the National Soldiers Home. And back at that time, $150,000 cash, which was a hell of a lot of money then to provide all the money to build for the government to build the National Soldiers Home. So when we see this BS about 388 acres or 387 acres or whatever that goes out in all this propaganda, that is a total lie. It's like almost as much of a lie as calling the National Soldiers Home a campus. And there is no such thing as a 388-acre deed. First two deeds reach 300 acres. That's what they consider north and south of Wilshire, basically. And they just say it's a 388-acre deed because they don't want folks to know how much of the land was already stolen, which is, upwards of 600 acres.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And so here, as we continue, um, it says again, the vets want the housing off of their soldiers' home, but looking forward to the bar in the hotel.
Yeah, and well, actually, I'll get into that in a second. So yeah, it goes on to say it has a new destiny. The money to restore it can be found to anchor a town center at the heart of a community of veterans on the 388-acre campus. It's been vacant for decades. They're talking about Building 13, which is a building over there. If I remember correctly, Building 13 may have been the Brentwood Hospital. That was a place where for decades UCLA did um, mostly confidential research with the Department of Energy that were hazardous experiments on disabled and homeless veteran residents there that really ramped up, between the 50s until UCLA had been suspended for a few years for that research by Congress in the late 90s. That's a whole other story. Goes on to say for some veterans, its best use would be a veterans hotel with a bar, a gathering place for veterans on the campus and their brothers and sisters around Southern California and the nation. Well, again, where the fuck are those some veterans, LA Times? Right? Some veterans in your mind, some veterans in who knows, right? Some veterans on Landgrab's payroll. But either way, those veterans better be homeless or disabled or unemployed because those are the only veterans who are stakeholders in the National Soldiers Home. But still, I don't know any veterans that believe that the best use of that land would be for a hotel with a bar. I don't know any. I've been at this for almost 6 years. I've never seen such a thing. But I do know it's quite interesting when I look at this, a gathering place for veterans on the campus for the purpose of a hotel or a bar or a mega mall that veterans from and their brothers and sisters around Southern California and the nation could use. Well, this is quite interesting, right? Because you have this whole land grab here that is trying to say that the National Soldiers Home is only for however many homeless veterans at this point are in Service District 1 of the LA city borderlines or something like that, right? They keep trying to shrink the population of homeless veterans that it would apply to. And they keep trying to lie that it only applies to just certain homeless veterans just within certain parts of the city because they want to make it look like it has as little demand as possible here in our national capital of veteran homelessness. We're the national capital of veteran homelessness because of this land grab. Because of this land grab, Los Angeles reigns as the national capital of veteran homelessness. Uh, then it says Bobby Shriver, the former Santa Monica mayor and veterans advocate, who gathered ideas from focus groups he organized in 2015, said he was caught off guard, but came to understand. Quote, it became clear to me what they wanted was a hotel bar where they could go to meet other veterans from out of town. Again, I mean, this is a story about a politician who sent his kids to Brentwood School, who lied and said that veterans had settled a case they won in 2013 to get rid of Brentwood School and UCLA. He lied to the nation, to the world, in 2015, saying that veterans wanted to throw that judgment in the trash and had made a settlement that never existed. This guy is a veterans advocate. I mean, what what the fuck has Bobby Shriver ever done for a veteran other than defraud them if they were on the verge of dying homeless? I mean, I'd like to see him come on this and talk about that because I mean, he's one of the most full of shit people I can think of in this whole topic. And that's not slander, that's truth. Um, and the focus groups he's talking about, you see, the director of the board of Berkshire Hathaway, Ronald Olson, Bobby Shriver, the head at the time of all of UCLA law, Gary Blasi, and who else was involved with it? And Mark Rosenbaum, although he wasn't part of formation. But these three guys, right, who were the ones who kind of designed the whole lie that disabled homeless veterans wanted to throw away a civil rights federal court judgment that they had won to get rid of illegal land use 2 years after winning it. They very quietly organized a nonprofit company in California called Vets Advocacy Incorporated. And they did it with about $1 million in Berkshire Hathaway stock donated from Warren Buffett's son. They did it with a bunch of money from the Weingart Foundation that Steven Soberoff has been the chair or the board director or the trustee of one or another for 22 years. And then some money from Bobby Shriver's county supervisor campaign that he was running at the time. He took a bunch of that money and diverted it into creating this company. This vets advocacy company has been nothing but a lobby against disabled and homeless veterans' lives, against their rights and entitlements to this land. It's been nothing but a lobby to redevelop it into a commercial, retail, industrial metropolis. And in fact, the hundreds of thousands of dollars of direct lobbying that they did to the US Congress, they committed felonies and wouldn't even report a penny of it on their federal 990 tax returns. And when I went to the guy that they had president at the time, now it's Anthony Allman, at the time I think it was Dan Garcia, I said, isn't this a criminal felony? Like, why wouldn't you report all this lobbying to get rid of all of these veterans, disabled homeless veterans, land use protections to their soldiers' home? And he responded, for me to fuck off, quote unquote. Well, fortunately, a couple years later, they had to amend and restate all of their tax returns, 3 or 4 years of them. And if you go and download those from the IRS, they will say that the only reason that they restated them is because they had failed to report that lobbying. So, how is how is somebody who creates this, how is a liar who has no remorse for contributing to the unwanted death at unwanted taxpayers' expense by avoidable veteran homelessness, Bobby Shriver, who creates a lobby against disabled homeless veterans to steal their land and who sends his kids to Brentwood School, how is this POS a veterans advocate? I mean, where has journalism gone today for something like the LA Times to feel there's nothing interesting about reporting on the fact that it is completely illegal to develop this mega mall metropolis, but that Bobby Shriver is a fucking advocate for disabled homeless veterans? I mean, that right there is just what a piece of trash this propaganda is. But anyway, it's clear to him that they want a hotel bar, and he talks about he talks about in 2015 gathering ideas from focus groups of veterans, and I'm going to tell you what that is. When they put a draft master plan up on the Federal Register in 2015 for veterans to comment on, to interdict and suppress disabled and homeless veterans' voices, Bobby Shriver and Gary Blasi and Mark Rosenbaum and Ron Olson and Anthony Allman and others went out on a disinformation campaign to lure and deceive disabled homeless veterans and veterans generally to misperceive that they were not to directly comment how they felt on the Federal Register, which is what they're supposed to be doing. That's the intent under law. But that all their comments should funnel through vets advocacy. And not only that, that they all should be subjected to a bunch of brainwash sessions before making those comments to vets advocacy. And we have the documents that we can show you, later on. These focus groups were stuff like Gary Blasi, the head of UCLA Law, who was pretending to be a pro bono lawyer representing veterans to dupe them out of their Valentini v. Shinseki judgment against the illegal land use, holding focus groups of all the great ways you could make the UCLA baseball stadium stay around at the soldiers' home. So then when you would graduate through this brainwash of these focus groups, then they would tell you to make the comments to them. And then Vets Advocacy sent this big giant pitch lobby for mixed use land use that's illegal as one giant comment on the Federal Register for the draft master plan, and said that the majority of veterans' comments are built into this. And if I remember correctly, if you actually drill down and look at these comments, these 1,000 or so comments, if I remember correctly, almost all of them are non-veterans and folks who are often intricately involved or to benefit or promoting or wanting the illegal development. So when they're talking about comments and veterans' voices, that's suppressed veterans' voices that they stepped in to interdict and suppress as part of their organized crime fraud against the lives of disabled and homeless veterans that has caused us to be our national capital of veteran homelessness. So I'm talking a lot. So are there questions?
No,
okay.
no. Let's keep going through
I
it.
don't even know if anybody's on. Okay. It says it calls for a mixed use facility with, sorry. It says, excuse me, let me back up here.
Wait, sorry.
It then goes on, while it's talking about this building 13, about the hotel and the bar. It says, that vision may never become a reality because a master plan for the property has a sharply different vision for building 13. Well, when they're talking about the master plan for the property, they're talking about actually a community plan created by private developers that public officials have been compromised and unduly influenced to fit in and insert into a master plan. And by the way, if you have a law and you have a planning document and there's a conflict between them, what do you think prevails? The law. So, but it says, the latest master plan, which is really a community plan, calls for a mixed-use facility with 24 units of supportive housing on the second floor for disabled and chronically homeless veterans, and a culinary center and a ground hall to make the building a bustling center of activity, though one lacking the social catalyst of a bar. What disgusts me about the mention of a bar here is back in the 1890s and the early 1900s, as the Soldiers' Home began delivering on its promise, which was healing veterans amongst each other in a community that is not based on a Starbucks or a bar, but a community that's based on veterans. Generations of these disabled veterans who were healing were already moving out. They created a city called Sawtell. Actually, LAPD had raided the Hall of Records of Sawtell in the middle of the night in the 20s to take it over, and that's how you got West LA. And a township called Westgate, which became, they co-developed that, and that became Brentwood and parts of the other areas there. Veterans had the most powerful voice on the west side of LA County. Whether disabled, previously unemployed, previously homeless, currently residing at the Soldiers' Home, they were very involved with their government because they understood the federal government to be we, the people. Not we, the people, sit around and vote for somebody and trust that they'll do, whatever needs to happen and that's it. Our job is done. We, the people, as in we, the people, are the most important factor of our government, of our United States federal government. And so they were very much involved in every issue. They had a very strong voice, a very legitimate voice, and obviously a very successful voice to develop uh, the most booming economies, uh, some of the most booming economies in the world, right? When you look at West LA or Brentwood. One of the ways um, that developers who have been wanting to steal that home since the 1890s had tried to suppress that voice is by trying to get as many of these veterans who are residing in the soldiers' home to drink by opening up bars all over Santa Monica, trying to lure veterans however they could, and they wanted the disability pensions of these veterans, right? Because if their home is afforded by the taxpayers, they wanted them to spend their disability pensions on alcoholism as opposed to what they were doing primarily instead, which was saving money or buying food or buying clothing or paying for transportation or whatever they needed to do as part of their healing process. So it just disgusts me to see this mention about something lacking the social catalyst of a bar as if that's a good thing. People who think that that's a good thing are the same types of crooks who thought that's a good thing because they wanted to unconstitutionally suppress the free speech of very productive people, so productive that they could still even be productive when they were disabled and homeless. Um, so once again, here comes the shell game. It says the differing visions for Building 13 are part of a larger tussle over construction plans that will shape the character of the veterans' land for decades. And that is kind of like your NLP tagline, right? Like, these are the only two choices you have, people. So just think that these are the two choices: the illegal megamall metropolis with the hotel bar, the illegal megamall metropolis without it. Don't think about the fact that it's illegal and that it's going to continue killing disabled veterans with avoidable homelessness at your expense, at our expense, at the taxpayer's expense. Continues to say there is almost universal support uh, for an uppercase town center as essential to serve a community that will one day, have 3,000 or more veterans living on site in temporary and permanent housing, and potentially thousands more visiting regularly from around Southern California. One day, right? This is the same bullshit housing for homeless veterans that these criminals have been talking about providing ever since they lied that veterans had settled the case that they had won and wanted to throw their judgment away, even though it never was thrown away in court, even though there never was a settlement on Valentini Vicensecchi's court record as of today. If you go check, right, the
Where did you
1,200
read that
units.
sentence? Where did you read
What's that?
that? Where did you read
What's
that
that?
last sentence?
Yeah,
The la-
there is almost universal support
oh,
for
okay,
an
got you. Yep, yep.
for
Go
an
ahead.
uppercase, right? I mean, again, it's like, what universal support? The universal support coming out your ass, right? I mean, this is total bullshit.
I
There is
think the
almost universal support. I mean, it's like someone should be reading you. There is almost universal support. You agree? I mean, it should. I mean, it's a fucking joke, right? There's nothing substantiated here. There's nothing what one would call journalism or free press. It's just a bullshit lie propaganda pitch for crime that kills people at taxpayers' expense. Um, there was a plan for 1,200 units of housing, a legitimate, a real plan. That was a plan VA, our U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, was already in development on before this latest criminal racket to try to steal the home came into play to throw the Valentini Vicensecchi judgment in the trash. And that was for the VA to build, renovate, whatever it needed to do, 1,200 units of housing using its existing buildings at the National Soldiers Home, and that housing, as the congressional acts all say, was only to be at the Soldiers Home, inside of it, and only for homeless veterans. It did not say we're going to turn around and say, ha ha, sucker, it's really affordable rental housing at 160% over fair market value for veterans to rent. It said, no, that's housing in accordance with the deed that the VA will operate and provide for homeless veterans who will be taken off the street, who cannot afford to pay rent, who need their disability pensions to not starve while they have a home, to buy clothing, to save money, to do things to help themselves because they want to, right? And that plan in 2015 had resulted on schedule. By the way, this is a plan that all of the construction uh, plans were approved. Congress had approved everything. Congress had fully funded all of the construction for VA to directly contract that construction without giving away any land illegally. And Building 209 had been done and opened in 2015. And you had approximately 64 veterans who were homeless that had been moved in that building, not paying rent that they can't afford, but living there, the VA serving them. And they had all kinds of real, actual wraparound services and support services. And there was a lot of positive feedback about that. And also, a lot of folks had gone through there, spent a year or two there, and moved out and started working out in the community. In 2017, this racket came in and said, we're taking the building over because they engaged public corruption to get an illegal enhanced use lease to take that building. And then they went to the county, the state, the city many times since, getting tens of millions of dollars a pop, lying that they want to acquire that building, renovate it to be housing for homeless veterans, and operate it as if they weren't already there, as if the veterans weren't already there. And they've never redeveloped that building. They never renovated it in any respect that they got that money for. They just took that cash and pocketed it. That's Shangri-La. That's Step Up on Second. Friendship for Affordable Housing. Maybe Community of Friends is involved with that. Vivian Ming Lum, Blue Green Preservation. These people are criminals. And then we go notice that, by 2021, 2022, not only that, they're running it like a slum. We went into Building 209. One of 4 elevators was working. Every single door lock in the whole building did not work because they were electronic key card and the system had malfunctioned. It was like that for like a year. People were dying because they didn't get their oxygen replaced. There was no security. I watched a veteran have to stick his walker to keep a door open so he wouldn't get locked out, so he could go outside. Obviously, he can't get far because he's got to use his walker to prop the door open. So the real plan was never the 2016 draft master plan. That's when Vets Advocacy and Bobby Schreiber came in to sabotage and derail the real plan that was fully funded by us through Congress, fully approved for VA to provide those 1,200 units that they never want you to know about or think about.
It's interesting you mentioned Shangri-La maybe 30 seconds after someone asked if you can talk about, how Shangri-La construction is related in the comments. Johnny
Sure.
asked that. But anyways, you could
Okay. So
expand on that.
so Shangri-La construction, bizarre story. First of all, Shangri-La Construction started, I believe, as a entertainment production company by the son or grandson of a multi-billionaire developer who was an heir to his fortune. This guy's name is Stephen Bing, and Stephen Bing had become uh, basically the largest political campaign donor, if I remember correctly, in the state of California. And one day he decides that he's going to be in the construction business, the development business. And so they shift from being a movie development and production company to a housing construction business, and they suddenly get uh, a takeover through this illegal enhanced use lease of building 209. And now they also have buildings 205 and 208. However, I will say, I have heard that they have now run away from the deals because the heat's up their ass. But I haven't confirmed that yet. So instead of actually doing any development or renovations or paying attention to really running the place, Stephen Bing got too caught up with smoking crack and having sex with transsexual prostitutes that he ended up losing it and jumping out the window of his penthouse in Century City and killing himself. And so his right hand man, Andrew Abdul Wahib Myers, took over. And he comes from being a football player for UCLA that I guess after that started working with Stephen Bing and Shangri-La. And Shangri-La proceeded to, through a partner that they had had at one point until recently named Vivian Ming Lum, and a company that she was involved with, and they were involved with called Figueroa Economical Housing Development Corporation. They started grabbing hundreds of millions of dollars of city taxpayer money, county taxpayer money, state taxpayer money, federal taxpayer money, whether it be bonds, cash, federal grants, whatever, to redevelop buildings 205, 208, 209. They never did a thing with 209. They never laid a shovel to 208 or 205 until we reminded them that they had become a day late on their expired term to actually lose it unless they did something. And they did end up doing construction on 205 and 208, but they did it, I think, for I don't know, somewhere between 700,000 to $1 million per studio unit renovation. And then they also had decided that the company that they now basically co-own, Step Up on Second, uh, would be the service provider instead of the VA. You know, the way that all this deal was supposed to work is just like VA was supposed to build everything, they also pushed out VA from being supposed to provide all the services. And so VA was just his every time the racket gets somewhere, they entirely remove two things: disabled homeless veterans and the VA, because those are the only two things that are supposed to be at the National Soldiers Home. If you want to steal the land, you got to remove the only two stakeholders, right? And, you know, whenever the shit hits the fan and people realize that something really bad is going on there, the racket always tries to pit veterans and the federal government against each other to beat each other off the land. And they try to say that the VA is responsible for all of the crimes that they commit. Now, the VA has got some problems. On the sixth floor of that National Soldiers Home Hospital, you've got a hell of a lot of public corruption. You've got people that are absolutely working against disabled veteran and homeless veterans' lives, such as John Kuhn, such as Robert Merchant, such as Stephen Braverman, you know, such as Keith Harris, right? But the way that works is these are people that are unduly influenced, right? Whether they're bribed, pressured, threatened, who knows what it is, right? So the fault that lies with VA is is it doesn't do anything about these people within it that get unduly influenced to become suckers and pawns and to facilitate the crimes. But the majority of the crime is committed by the racket that doesn't ever want to be mentioned in anything. Look at the Powers v. McDonough lawsuit. The whole thing is against the VA. And when you look at when all the shit that it talks, right? When it talks shit about CTRS, when it talks shit about the conditions in the EUL buildings, all of the shit it talks is shit that it's talking about somewhere that VA is nowhere to be found. Think about that. Where's VA in the buildings it's talking shit about? Where's VA in the CTRS program? Right? It's a scheme to bring the federal government in as the scapegoat, to bring us to misperceive and forget that we are the federal government. When we're against the federal government, we're against ourselves because it's supposed to be us. It's supposed to be our tool for having a stake in how the country is run. And that is what organized crime wants us to give up and not have anymore, right? It wants private companies to take over because they can't be audited, because there's no oversight of it, right? If the reason so many people make complaints about the federal government is because we can, right? Because we have tools and opportunities and laws that allow us to talk as much shit as we want about it, as long as it's productive and true, to make it as good as we possibly can, which we're not doing a very good job of right now. Private companies, you're not allowed to see their, unless they're nonprofits, you're not allowed to see their returns. You're not allowed to know what they're doing. You got to sue them just to get a ground floor basic level of information on them. Um, so anyway, that's the story of and then some of Shangri-La construction.
I think that was helpful. We could keep going through this. There are comments and questions, but we could keep
Let's go through all of
diving.
them.
Well, okay, I'll read a gentleman X on he goes by Axel Foley on X, which is Twitter. He wrote a couple things, so I'll just read a couple of the comments.
Sure.
He said a community of veterans will be more effective than anything that could be offered. He said taxpayers pay into the VA and now are paying HUD to house vets. So I think HUD could be something interesting to talk about. He said the money is the problem, not the solution. Meanwhile, UCLA is the #1 in the nation for education. And let's see, he said, check the salaries of those who claim to advocate, quote unquote, for the vets. And he said a couple months ago he was prepared to die on the 6th floor. So I think he maybe seems to be talking about the West Los Angeles VA. So I just wanted to share some of those comments and let him know that we're, of course, rooting for him. And if there's anything you
Well,
want
I
to
agree with
speak on that.
the community, and I think as has always been intended, as has been successful for over a century, as is most evident, a community is not what shops you have. A community is not what businesses run things. A community is a community of people and their culture. And I believe that that goes for veterans too. I believe that veterans have a shared experience in service, especially if it's one of combat, one of disability, or one of homelessness, any or all of them, that cannot be understood by us, that can only be understood between them.
Understood.
So that's community. Um, the money, the HUD thing, I'm really glad to hear that because that is such a big catch in this. Um, I'm so glad to hear that because, right, it's like, okay, I don't get this. So the taxpayer is already paying still to build this housing and develop this housing and operate this housing by the federal government over at that soldier's home. The price keeps going up every year. We don't stop paying it. It's already been paid for. And then suddenly we're paying HUD on top of that to make it like rental housing. It takes homeless veterans like years to try to get. That's all inflated and becoming run by private companies, and the services get thrown in the trash. I mean, it's so bad that there are tenants that complain, I have to get out of this shit that they've turned this building into before it makes me feel worse. Um, and then with the money being the problem, I agree. The in that context that yeah, the more money you add on top of good money that's already spent to do the right job, I don't see how that's going to go anywhere but doing something bad. And as for UCLA being a number, I don't know if UCLA is the #1 educational institution, but I can say I don't have anything against what UCLA does that is good. There are a lot of good professors there. There are a lot of friends that I have that I've grown up with that have gotten an excellent education there. I went there for accounting and business courses for several years in the evenings before I opened up a business that I've not been able to run since 2019. And there, my stepfather played for the Bruins basketball for John Wooden, and there's a scholarship there in my grandparents' name, my step grandparents. So I can appreciate the good things UCLA does, but what they've done with veterans in that soldier's home is demonic. They have no place there at all. It is. I don't even want to go into it here, but it's disgusting. And they just need to get the fuck out of that place, because there's just no good they can do there anymore. I mean, they've spent 70 years demonstrating, that when it comes to ethics and veterans, they're full of shit. Whether it be stealing the baseball field from the soldiers' home residence and the American Legion that the Korean War veterans had renovated, or whether it be doing electrical implant tests, um, or other nasty research on unwitting test subjects there. So,
Right. Or and the CNH tract, right? Where
and stealing the whole CNH tract and building 3,000 units of housing there
yeah.
for students
When I
that
saw
sits empty.
3,000 units in the LA Times article, I almost was excited thinking
Thinking that was it.
that they found that they were like, yeah, we're going to place 3,000 homeless disabled veterans right there. Um, but of course, that's never been mentioned by mainstream media or press, it seems.
No, they can't. They can't even. It's so bad and so indefensible, the fact that they have just so grossly and with such great damage violated the law without remorse in something like stealing the CNH tract, which they were allowed to share with the federal government only for the purpose of building a new hospital for disabled homeless veterans there, right? And instead, they took the 35, 36 acres there on the other side of the cemetery and acted as if it never existed for veterans anymore and was always their land, and started doing deals with private developers to make apartment complexes, building parking lots, and then, of course, the luxury student rental housing there. 3,000 turnkey units where every single homeless veteran that we know of, per these whatever counts they do in Los Angeles, could right now be housed in there on their own land at their own soldiers' home that we taxpayers already pay for. And that is housing that was also built by the taxpayers. So that's turnkey, right? But then you have these people like Steven Soberoff, expert witness for for veterans in this Powers v. McDonald's bullshit case, who's saying that really the best place to put veterans, since we need to clear the land for this town center mega mall metropolis, is on all the radiological dumps from UCLA's hazardous research, uh, that were made in like the Arroyo section, or all these parts, or by the illegal oil operation. We need to put veterans in bigger sheds there so they have a front row seat of watching their land be stolen and a mega mall with a hotel bar being built on it while they work on their PACT Act claims getting radiated by toxic waste. I mean, this shit,
Yeah.
you can't even make this shit up. It's so disgusting.
I want to say the comment from Axel Foley because he responded here. He said he's shackled to HUD. He's housed in a crime-ridden area. He gets dehumanized every time he goes to the VA for appointments. Um, Landless Lady on X said Step Up on Second is paired with Shangri-La and home key projects in the state. I believe some are already in receiverships in the expense of their local jurisdictions like San Bernardino. And Axel Foley mentioned he's near MacArthur Park on Hartford Avenue.
Mhm.
Uh, Commander Francisco Juarez joined the chat. He said, my godfather debated a sports celebrity in defense of the original baseball field. I want to mention, we can talk more about him, but if you are watching, feel free to share. Feel free to drop a comment, a question. We're going to keep talking about this, keep raising awareness and going through this LA Times article. If you're just joining us, this LA Times article came out today. The title is Vets Are Pushing for a Town Center on LA's VA campus, but what is it and will it have a hotel bar? This obviously was pretty gross to read this morning. Despite feeling somewhat positive that at least the public can see the truth, I suppose. So I think that knowing we're in the nation's capital of veteran homelessness, you see a hotel bar. I'm hoping we all see that clearly and are outraged. I know that someone also made a comment saying, real quick, they mentioned AA. They were asking if there's AA at the Soldiers Home, and they said Skid Row has opposed new bars on the grounds because it's a recovery community. I feel like this was timed for the injunctive relief hearing tomorrow. That was
Yeah.
another comment made.
Uh,
Go ahead.
very as sad as the situation is, it's very promising to hear these comments, in my opinion. I'm glad to see that these are being thought about, and why wouldn't they? Um, as far as I can tell, HUD, whether it was intended to be this or not, when folks like Thomas Safran of Thomas Safran Associates and Douglas Guthrie of Hacla were the first generations of HUD folks that helped build that department. A lot of people don't know that. Um, I feel like HUD is constantly used as a way to interdict legitimate and successful and efficient housing for homeless people, not just veterans, but homeless people in general. It's been used as a way to kind of often skirt the McKinney-Vento Act, um, and to just kind of derail shit. And a big problem with HUD that I see now in Los Angeles is these bankers that run these housing authorities. They hoard, like Douglas Guthrie, right? They hoard these vouchers to try to say that they should only be project-based vouchers and let people die on the streets homeless, so they can make sure that their buddies, when they finish their forever developments of these projects they barely work on but get tons of money and land for, they can make sure that all the rents are paid by those vouchers, that they always have the vouchers they need, that their bros need, for their own projects, and that the tenants, the formerly homeless people who go to live there, have to be chained to those apartments at least for 1 year. And a lot of times they would just straight up lie to tenants to make sure that they wouldn't know that they could go somewhere else after a year and take their voucher with them, to deceive them into thinking that no, you always just have to stay here or you have to go and lose your voucher. And for the AA thing, to me, that is one of the most glaring, um, insightful facts into a huge problem with UCLA running every single medical related or service related program outside of just basic wraparound stuff at the Soldiers Home, right? Nowhere on these remaining 400 acres that haven't been stolen yet is there one single AA program. Now, there are a lot of different meds that aren't FDA approved yet, and psychiatric meds and stuff like that, many of which may actually be good and effective. But nevertheless, let's realize the fact that you have a whole menu of medications that you can take for alcoholism, but you've got no AA anywhere on those 400 acres. That is not a coincidence. How easy would it be? And there are many residents that do go to AA there that have complained to me over the years. Why am I going over here in Brentwood, to this temple for AA or whatnot, instead of right here? Why are buildings sitting around? I can't have an AA here that's with my peers. That's by design.
Absolutely. That's a good point. I mean, to think that there's restrictions on Skid Row for bars and alcohol, but let's put that first thing on the VA is Soldiers Home is insane.
Yeah.
Um,
And regarding the comment about Step Up started as an independent company, with Todd Lipka. But as far as I can tell now, in terms of the corporate structure and everything, they look to be at least minimum significantly owned by Shangri-La. Um, and they are very heavily funded by Soboroff historically through the Weingart Foundation. Even in 2021, Weingart Foundation not only gives them grants, unrestricted purposes for unrestricted use, but is also making them like loans for $1.5–2 million just in a year. So, step up, I feel is just, and the other thing too is if you look at the corporate records of these companies, there's like 20 step ups or 10 step ups and 10 Shangri-Las. These folks they take their one company and they make like 10 companies with the same name out of it because they're too busy going and running rackets of snagging in each company, tens to hundreds of millions of dollars of grants and loans and bonds and funding, um, of which a lot goes in their pockets. I mean, look, Ventura County Star newspaper reported a couple months ago that Step Up or Shangri-La, as part of the investigation, because they're actually under criminal or civil or criminal investigations right now for frauds, not for frauds all over the country for homeless housing programs. Um, One audit found that the CFO, I think, of Shangri-La or Step Up had taken $111,000 of this money and spent it on a luxury purse for his girlfriend. I mean, again, this is, I'm not kidding you. I made a comment about this once. These people are the most undertreated segment of mentally ill people that desperately need our help. And these beds or whatever the fuck they make up to put people in because the housing they never built. This is mental illness. When you're taking money from homeless housing programs and spending it to buy $111,000 purses, you are batshit crazy. You can't even
Well,
say that you're crooked. You're absolutely nuts.
it was two purses though for 128K, just to be clear. It was
Oh,
it,
two
it was
purses. Okay.
yeah, and you know, $120,000 diamond necklace,
Oh my
a
God.
$35,000 watch,
Oh my God.
Coachella, they had 20 VIP passes, 53K on that, uh,
So
all
so
under the
this is the
guise of
this is the
housing
stuff. It's like,
homeless.
oh hey, by the way, this is happening. While on the other hand, folks are saying somebody's homeless and complaining that they're being fucked with and not getting housing. So let's call them mentally ill, right? Let's call somebody wanting what they have earned and deserved, and they need to survive. Let's call crying out for that mental illness, and alternatively call these people fucking heroes doing wonderful things that we can never figure out what the fuck is wonderful that they ever do. I don't get that.
Absolutely. Okay. Back to the LA Times article. I will read some comments here. Uh, Francisco Juarez, who I'll say commander. I'm in AGIF El Camino Real Forum. I'm the legislative officer. And Francisco Juarez is the commander of AGIF El Camino Real Forum. And he's made some comments that I'll read here. He says, World War II veterans told Vietnam veterans back in the 70s that land grab was taking place, that HUD does not belong on the homeland. The only genuine and successful master plan are the deed restricted land use mandates. And a comment that just came in. Well, Axel Foley, he kind of is continuing to share that his experiences in HUD Vash is awful. He says, my building is required to house 25% HIV and AIDS patients without disclosing who they are. Um, and there's just some comments that they don't want veterans organizing. Um, they mentioned how awful they've been to Miss Miles. Axel Foley says he's been begging for help. And Alfred Lugo's in the chat. He said, Ryan, please inform those listening about the beachfront. So that just wanted to share. And thank everyone for commenting, sharing. Again, this is stream one of many. We will continue to streams specific to the Soldiers Home and updates regularly. And we'll be bringing on other guests as well and people that can help provide information, facts, and clarity on this pretty confusing issue, but one that we desperately need to come together on and figure out. So if there's anything you want to touch on, I know I just said a bunch, but
Well, regarding the preventing HUD tenants that are veterans from organizing, that's overall too. They prevent these crony developers who seem to get all these deals in LA and rarely build anything for homeless people, but turn it into over market rate affordable housing, so to speak. They do everything they can to prevent tenants, in my opinion, from realizing that every single project is supposed to have a tenants committee. If I remember correctly, it's still built into all the HACLA or whatever city or county regulations. And I don't know of any place that does have one of those committees. And I do know that New Directions in Sepulveda, one of the projects they have, they it is very evident that they thoroughly harassed and hazed all the way until they had to get out through unlawful eviction a tenant that was trying to lawfully organize a tenants committee there over at the Sepulveda VA. Yeah, no, free speech, and whether it's veterans who are homeless or non-veterans who are homeless, that is the biggest target um, of these crooks. Because I think that while they take taxpayers' money to make it look like that came from their ingenious business success, to make them incredibly wealthy and laud themselves by bribing or whatever public officials to talk about how wonderful they are. Um, I don't think it changes the fact that a lot of times they're just stupid thugs who could not find a legitimate way to use their intellect and their ethics and their heart to do something right. And so I believe those are the type of people that are no match for free speech and no match for the voice of the people. Um, so that's why they don't want anyone talking or saying anything, because people are going to talk truth. It's going to sound like the truth, and they're too stupid to know how to do anything about it when that truth gets out. So they don't want anyone to hear it. And then the beachfront, a lot of folks don't know, although Francisco was integral and in a big way discovered or rediscovered this. There is a large parcel of land right there on the Santa Monica beachfront that is part of the National Soldiers Home. It is the only separate parcel of land there, and it was the first to be stolen. And it's being used basically as a parking lot for the Jonathan Club, which is the notoriously racist, misogynist country club that LA's primarily developers, have patroned for so
On
long.
Tuesday, June 28th.
And that is where veterans who are residents of a soldier's home would go from the soldier's home to the beach to go be at the beach with family and amongst each other, when the weather was nice. And it also was the only parcel that had one additional term of its deed, which was to serve as a place where veterans and disabled veterans, unemployed veterans who are homeless, maybe if they weren't even yet in the soldier's home, could go and use shower facilities and bath facilities and have a place, um, be sanitary, go to the bathroom, use a shower with dignity, or a bath at the time. Francisco had rediscovered through the Hall of Records that deed that they had just totally suppressed and made it look like never existed before. And they are very much interested in that parcel, the racket, because they see it. Many of them have seen it, at least in the past, as a way to plow a purple line, an additional purple line, straight down San Vicente through the coral trees there to hit right into there for another station right at the beach. Um, they're very hot on keeping that fraud alive, and the Jonathan Club certainly doesn't want any veterans there, disabled and homeless veterans there. I think they get the parking lot usage for free or something like that. So it's it's another shame.
If people want to watch the video, I just kind of played a clip just without audio, but veterans advocate for their beachfront home in Santa Monica. It actually has, I believe, your comment, excuse me, Francisco's and many others. These were the council members that were spoken in front of at the time. So anyone can kind of watch that and check that out. To go back into the article, if that's okay, or if
Whatever
that's
you
what,
want to do,
if
yeah.
that's yeah, no, that makes sense. I guess we can. I think we're here, or wherever you felt kind of had the most confusing or potentially misleading information.
Yeah. Oh, well, I just want to see. Yeah. So it says a Veterans Oversight Board created to monitor the campus development vigorously disagrees. And they're talking about disagrees with the notion of one of the two shells, right? Of doing an illegal town center where it's mixed with some floors being commercial retail shops, general public can use, and a couple floors being housing, affordable rental housing for not disabled, not homeless, not unemployed, but veterans. And they're saying that this Veterans Oversight Board created to monitor the development vigorously disagrees with that. It opposes supportive housing in the town center. It has advocated for uses that would serve veterans both living on the campus and attracted from far and wide, in particular, a hotel. Um, this is a federal advisory committee that by law is supposed to do not much beyond improving outcomes for disabled and homeless veterans and advocating for their housing at their national soldiers' home. So I think that this statement, this quote, is enough to understand that every fucking member of that board is batshit corrupt. And that includes Robert Begland, who's Cox Nichols Castleson, whatever Cox Nicholson lobbying law firm is deeply involved with the Urban Land Institute that Stephen Sobroff has also been deeply involved with. That includes Anthony Allman of Vets Advocacy. That includes Jim Zenner of the county that acts like he's caring for veterans while screwing them. That includes Jonathan Sharon, who was in charge for UCLA of a lot of the 5150 policies and all the programs for homeless veterans that have fucked everything so bad on that land for veterans over many years that we had to advocate while veterans were in tents for 2 years or longer just for them to even be allowed on the land that is theirs, not UCLA's. And this guy, Jonathan Sharon, who sits on this fucking board, suddenly becomes, in this Powers v. McDonald lawsuit, an expert witness for disabled veterans and homeless veterans making $1,000 an hour with Steven Soboroff. He's now become the voice of the veterans in this lawsuit. And he's advocating that there be a hotel and a big fucking mega mall there. Of course he is. That's right up his alley. Um, you know, so then it says nobody is advocating that VA not build housing, said Anthony Allman, executive director of Vets Advocacy, a nonprofit created to monitor development of the VA grounds. By the way, I've never seen anything saying that Vets Advocacy is supposed to be doing anything or has any authority over on those grounds. The immediate question is at hand is where to locate that housing in relation to everything else that belongs on campus to make it a genuine community. Um, well, I'll agree with him where he says where to locate something in relation to everything else that belongs there, like housing, right? Yeah. He has a question at hand as to where to locate some giant illegal development uh, in a way that'll fit with whatever is actually supposed to be there. But I disagree with him that a mega mall is what makes a genuine community. Um, Allman and other critics say the VA is killing the notion of a real town center because it can't or won't pay for it. Without money for a ground hall, fitness center, or library, let alone a hotel, it is allowing its developer, which has access to capital for housing, to substitute housing where it isn't needed, they say. The VA did not grant Times requests to interview officials about the town center. There are a couple of things I like about this article, believe it or not. This is one of them because it indicates that finally advocacy and and awareness by the public, not just veterans but also the public, has come to a point where even even some of these folks on the sixth floor, Westlake VA, are beginning to back off because they can see the writing on the wall that this shit can't sound anything but illegal and stupid to most people at this point. And because it is, but also that now, for a long time, you've had these three pirate ships on the sea, right? Or multiple pirate ships on the sea, this land grab, right? You've got the illegal land users like the UCLA and Brentwood School on a pirate ship, AP2. You've got the developers behind the EUL scheme buildings. You've got the bribed or otherwise unduly influenced VA GLHS officials. Now you've got the Powers v. McDonough bullshit attorneys who are really part of University of California with their expert witnesses. You know, Finally, these pirates who used to have an alliance are now shooting cannonballs at each other. I'm glad to see that because that's a step that needs to happen before they go down, and they will go down. So I'm glad to see that VA, even though it has its problems, is at least saying, okay, these people are just taking it too far. They're fucking nuts. We can't be sailing next to them on this one. That's a good sign. It says the West Los Angeles Veterans Collective, a partnership of housing developers and service providers selected in 2018. My dog freaking out. The West Los Angeles Veterans Collective, a partnership of housing developers and service providers selected in 2018 as the VA's principal developer. It can do everything the master plan calls for with philanthropic contributions and funds coming from a recent congressional authorization, said Brian De Andrea, Senior Vice President of Century Housing. Total lie. First of all, West Los Angeles Veterans Collective was not selected in accordance with any law of our federal government by any means of full compliance. We don't even know how the fuck they got selected, other than maybe by bribes. Okay, there was no competitive anything. It was suddenly, we're in charge. Just kind of like the way Steven Sobroff walked into Powers v. McDonald courtroom and said, I'm now in charge of the master plan. We're building a mega mall here with a hotel or whatever he said. Actually, he's against the hotel. It's also a lie that says they can do whatever they want with the master plan. Again, master plan on one hand, the law and the deeds on the other. If there's a conflict between the two, a plan doesn't win. The deeds and the law that are aligned with the deeds win. So, taking that further, philanthropic contributions and funds. What philanthropic contributions and funds? The only philanthropic contributions and funds from these amazing private mega mansion family offices is whatever tax money that they're taking from the people and making it look like it's their donations. I mean, there hasn't been any real private investment in this. It's been stealing taxpayers' money to build shit that will put profits right in their pocket and then unitize it to make it look like it's on a private market of some global asset management index fund. Sometimes in the case of what Weingart Foundation is investing in, located in the Cayman Islands. Um, so, but you can't really trust much of anything Brian De Andrea says because he's with Century Housing. You know, you got to understand the history of Century Housing Corporation. When they were building the Century Freeway here, right, the state of California or the county of Los Angeles or whatnot had gone to all these people that were in the way of that freeway and said, get the fuck out of here. Not here's some money for your home, even. Just go. Kind of like what they did where Dodger Stadium now is, but even on more land. And so there was a big lawsuit, and there was a federal lawsuit, and the result of that federal lawsuit was a consent decree that the state and the county and the Fed were going to have to provide every single person displaced by the Century Freeway, every family, right, a home of equal or greater value or rental if they were renting than whatever they were going to be leaving. There wasn't any exceptions to that, really. And so the state of California created a government agency to handle building all of that housing. And it was called the Century Housing Agency. And the California state taxpayers put in hundreds of millions of dollars into the Century Housing Agency. And then that agency, once all the money was in the bank, said, we hereby announce we're a private company and this is all our money. Goodbye, government. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's never been another example of this in history of government in the United States. They literally took a government agency of California state and said one day, we are now suddenly a private company, and all the taxpayer money to do this is now our private money. And of course, what do? They then go spending as much of that money as they can, evidently, on building as little of that housing as possible and creating as many bogus lawsuits and legal obstacles as possible to do whatever housing they're supposed to provide, building it as slow as possible. And in part, that resulted in them getting a bunch of federal land at a naval shipyard in Long Beach or whatnot. Saying, I guess, the hundreds of millions we had at Century Housing, like that's not enough. We need free land now from the federal government, the Long Beach Naval Shipyard or whatnot. We're going to come up with something called a master plan with our friend U.S. vets to build some of that housing finally. But instead, because of something they heard about called HUD-VASH, they built the housing for veterans who could afford or who could get on the HUD-VASH program instead of the people displaced by the Century Freeway. And just like this bullshit master plan to steal the soldiers' home, they took a little sliver or a little dot in the middle of that land and they made that this affordable rental housing for the people they weren't supposed to be serving in the first place. And then the rest of it became commercial industrial retail that they illegally profit off of otherwise. It says there are some in the community that want to turn this into the Grove at West LA, DeAndrea said. That's a true statement. And I'm glad to see that, right? Because how long have these people been lying and saying that we're crazy, kooky ass conspiracy theorists think such a thing? There it is. It's true if they say it. It's true if a criminal says it, just not true if a regular person says it, right? He said Building 13 and the 4 new buildings that the Veterans Board opposes are critical to the Veterans Collective goal in completing 1,200 units of supportive housing. Yeah. In a survey of veterans this spring in partnership with the VA, the Veterans Collective did not hear any particular interest in a hotel, DeAndrea said. I did notice that. The dispute has been building for years back and forth, missives between successive VA secretaries and the Veterans Community Oversight Engagement Board, a 20-member body created by Congress to allow veterans a say in how their land will be developed. Let's stop right there. For the first time, this is not true, starting with Dennis McDonough. Because if you look at the transcript and or the federal government's official audiovisual record of the Veterans Community Oversight and Engagement Board public meeting on June 22nd, you will see that it actually says they throw up the law, Public Law 114-226, on the screen, and the VCOAB board says, we all know that it's illegal to build a town center. The law right here in section 2B2 or whatever the hell it is says that it's illegal. But the developers want to do it anyway. And that includes U.S. Vets and DeAndre at the time. And Secretary McDonough has said to go ahead and proceed with moving forward on that. Right? So this is not, they're trying to make it look like, Dennis McDonough's a good guy and he's pushing back. Dennis McDonough is not the one at the VA pushing back. He's the one at the VA conspiring with these criminals. And so let's not be confused there. Then says U.S. District Judge David O'Carter, after a 4-week trial, included the town center in his order, requiring the VA to build thousands of new shelter and housing units on the campus. He gave to the government 18 months to begin construction and appointed a monitor to ensure it happens. Well, let's go into the reality of Judge David O'Carter's so-called opinion order. Brentwood School, UCLA, parking lots, all that stuff was already ruled, adjudged, and ordered illegal in the Valentini v. Shinseki lawsuit in the order of September 29, 2013. Since then, the OIG, the FBI, the press, numerous authorities and substantial voices have also reiterated that that shit is illegal. Just because a judge that, just like the 2 key attorneys for the plaintiffs and Powers v. McDonough, just like the special master, grand wizard, chancellor, whatever that person is called, that's supposed to be overseeing this case now. Judge Carter, too, is also faculty of the University of California at the Irvine campus, at whatever that law institute is, that is getting money from Weingart Foundation ever since this lawsuit started. And just because you're a judge and you issue an official looking opinion because you're too chicken shit to say it's an order, that the same folks that have been determined to be illegal over and over again for years, that your opinion is they're also illegal, does not give you any right to violate the federal law in a federal courthouse as someone under oath to properly interpret and represent that law, to totally illegally order for the commencement of the construction of a fucking mega mall at a national soldiers home that's going to result in the death, continued death of disabled and homeless veterans at taxpayers' expense. Judge Carter disgusts me. To me, how low of a human being must you be to damage and erode our federal government like that? Utterly despicable. That's why I don't even want to show up tomorrow at that crap, because they can't even run an operation in a federal courtroom that in any way resembles the law.
Wait, what's
So
tomorrow? If you could give context, since you just mentioned it.
there's a hearing where, despite all of the misrepresented press that the illegal land use deals for Brentwood School and UCLA have been terminated, it's actually just simply said by Carter that they're going to one day come up with a plan someday to create an exit strategy for them, which is the same thing Mark Rosenbaum and some of these attorneys and law firms, public counsel and university law, had said back when they sabotaged and conspired against the judgment that veterans won 10 years ago, where they said they'd come up with an exit strategy for Brentwood School and UCLA. So, I think that they're pretty nervous about that because
That's
they
in
were
the
very
conclusions of law, correct?
right.
That's
So what happened
do you
is
recall
Carter
what number
issued
it is? Because we have it on the screen, if you recall.
the docket number.
I have the docket on the screen. If you recall, in the conclusions of law, like 200 and like
Oh shit.
no, not I didn't don't expect you to know that. But I might be able to pull it up just so I could look we could look at it as
I don't remember, but if you look up Powers v. McDonald on Google, there'll be cases of interest or something like that. It'll show, because the way all my files are named, I can't bring it up very
yep.
easily.
Mm-hmm.
But what it is a couple weeks ago or a month ago or whatnot, Carter issues an opinion. It's like 100 and something page opinion, and then it's followed by several pages of something he calls conclusions of law. And in the opinion section of this, he does what the lawsuit complaint does, right? He talks a lot of shit that a lot of people like us will resonate with, right? He says, the parking lots are full of this crap and that crap, and did a bunch of illegal shit. That deal's terminated. Yeah, the what was the other one? The oil deal, that we did have a settlement to keep around, but advocates realized that we were fucking conspiring to do that. So that shit's bad. We're going to get rid of that too. And UCLA and Brentwood School, man, let me tell you about all the terrible shit they did. They're so bad. Oh my God. These folks are so bad that instead of terminating, we're going to one day come up with an exit strategy for them someday in the future. Thank you very much. And that's what tomorrow's hearing is about, is when the people begin to realize in greater number that they didn't terminate those deals with UCLA and Brentwood School. They brought in someone, who's a special master, who has a pretty solid career background in defending white collar criminals for a living at his own law firm. And that guy's going to be in charge of coming up with some exit strategy plan. Just the notion of a special master. I feel like, that's like something in the Ku Klux Klan, right? Like, how's it go? Like special masters right before like Grand Wizard or something like that. What the hell is a special master? How about just being a legitimate judge and saying, I'm not going to say this shit's illegal. I'm going to evict it because we already know it's illegal. Anyway, there's nothing on the agenda tomorrow for the totally illegal town center that he's ordered construction of. And by the way, the current plan for that is to make way for that illegal construction to start in 18 months, pushing veterans out into all these units of temporary housing, bigger sheds on this radiological wasteland. And then whatever other housing they're talking about, to put that outside the soldiers' home. And to have that done anytime in the next 6 years, and to have the special master be able to lower the number of housing at their own will that can be built. All of this shit is totally against the law, right? So it's a lie that this opinion order is about additional housing. It's about turning the lie, the old lie of the permanent supportive housing that hasn't been built yet, 750 units or whatever. It's about converting that into just bigger sheds than CTRS on dumps of radiological waste to build a mall on the good land that's illegal. And then whatever additional housing that is the new live permanent supportive housing, well, that doesn't matter because that's somewhere out in the county over the next 6 years. It's not about the National Soldiers Home. Now, I hope some of these dipshits can come to their senses and take a bit of an about face tomorrow morning and try to save their ass at least, or stay out of jail or whatever by saying, okay, we're evicting Brentwood School or we're evicting UCLA. That would be a smart decision to make. It would also be very lawful and ethical to do that. But I can't say that I'm too hopeful that they will.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Anyhow, I think there's too much to go on to, we'd have to stretch this too far to go
Yeah.
through the rest of it. I think the gist is there.
Yeah, I agree. And we put up on the screen the case, and here, G, federal defendant shall commence active construction of the town center described in the 2022 master plan within 18 months of this order. I did do a search,
Right.
and it
By the
mentions,
way, namely the thing that LA Times nor anybody else could figure out how to tell the public about, because they haven't figured out the right deceitful lie of how to present it until today.
right. And yeah. Well, okay, let's see here. I think this is where we're at. If I'm not mistaken. With DeAndrea, his plans to provide 90,000 square feet of space for community uses in the 5 buildings, the town hall, the development center, the coffee shop, the barber shop, the art studio, a business incubator, library, or tech lab in the survey that they did.
My eyes are getting fried. I don't see where this is anymore.
Oh, no worries. It's basically the Brian DeAndrea section.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, I just didn't have it highlighted. All right. Yeah, I don't know what he's talking about, 90,000 square feet. It's more like 450,000 square feet. But then, yeah, it continues. It says, okay, so whether that gives the Veterans Collective a green light to proceed or opens the door to opponents to challenge its plan is yet to be determined. Carter is holding a hearing Wednesday to fill in the thorny details left out of his broad order. Yeah, that's news to me. If you look at the court docket, he's doing as much as he can to not say a fucking thing about the town center because it's so obviously ridiculous and illegal. But maybe Carter is now going to have to say something about it, but it's not on the docket as to, like, the judge put the agenda as to what's going to be talked about. It doesn't say that yet. There is no door open for opponents to challenge this plan in terms of it being a hotel instead of not having a hotel. Okay, that is a fantasy among these batshit nut job criminal racketeers. They're trying to tell us that the door has been opened to add a hotel. Okay, let's be clear on what that is. The town center wasn't initially part of the case that led to that order, but it emerged in testimony of several witnesses, each offering a different interpretation of what it is. That's correct, but that's not legal. That's right. Remember, the lawsuit, we were always told, was about doing the right thing and getting rid of illegal land use and housing disabled homeless veterans. All of a sudden, one day after the plaintiffs and the defendants rested their case, finished presenting everything, suddenly a new proposal shows up supposedly from the veterans, but you know damn well it's not. It's from these attorneys shafting them, that throws out everything the case was asking for before, which wasn't great to begin with, and now says it's all about getting a town center and pushing veterans out of the way into these boxes on radiological lands and building whatever rest of the housing somewhere out in the community and pushing that 6 years. Oh, by the way, we're asking for something totally different now after we rested our case. I'm not exaggerating this. I'm being literal. Go look at the case record. That's exactly what happened. So, you know, and the testimony that emerged is UCLA and the county's Jonathan Sharon, who's been one of the biggest part of the problems over the last decade of how the soldiers' home's been shafting disabled veterans out of their home. And Steven Soberoff, the former LAPD commissioner, Weingart board member, trustee, chair, and billionaire, I think, mega mall developer, who was Reardon's former advisor, suddenly just appointing himself as an expert witness with John Sharon on replacing homeless veterans and disabled veterans' voice as to how their land, not Jonathan Sharon's, not Steven Soberoff's, disabled homeless veterans' land is supposed to be used. And I understand that. I understand why Steve Soberoff thinks he can do that, because he's fucking paying for the whole lawsuit through the Weingart Foundation, right? So yeah, I think that Weingart believes that hey, we're paying for this fucking lawsuit, so shit, we should be able to get whatever we want from it. Well, that's fine if we're in a world where people can just break the law however they want. I think that works. But otherwise, I don't know, maybe go to jail. Jonathan Sharon, former head of Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health, said a veterans community should be a place where even those who are not living on the campus can be with their brothers, their sisters, their military community family members, accessing community resources, whether it's amenities, whether it's entertainment, whether it's recreation, whether it's treatment. Well, once again, another example of saying things that really tug on the heartstrings of people, but really just say, we're not going to build a fucking thing for veterans unless they agree with us stealing more land and turning it into a metropolis in time for an Olympics launch. Certainly housing veterans requires apartments, but all of us want to live in community. This is John Kuhn. Certainly housing veterans requires apartments, but all of us want to live in communities that are vibrant, that have active socialization, commercial activity, retail places, places that make it feel like a neighborhood, not just a place you go in to close the door, Kuhn said. Well, a place where you go in to close the door is what John Kuhn thinks his office is when it comes to disabled and homeless veterans. He's under an oath to serve on the taxpayer's dime. So he should just get the fuck out of his office. Yes, housing veterans does require a place for them to live in and a place that promotes a vibrant community with active socialization. But whatever this shit is about commercial activity, retail space, all that stuff, well, all that stuff is right next to the soldiers' home on 3 borders of it, all the way around it. So you can go to Westwood Village, you can go to Brentwood, you can go to West LA, you can go a lot of places that extremely prejudiced people don't want to see veterans at, on land and communities that veterans who are disabled and homeless developed, founded after they healed at a soldier's home. Steve Soberoff, who oversaw the master plan development of Playa Vista, said the VA Town Center needed its own master plan conducted by a specialist in community building rather than a housing developer. That's nice, Steve, but who cares? Establishment, construction, and permanent maintenance of a home for disabled veterans. That's what the deed says. Veterans contend that trust was broken when the VA removed about 1,000 men living on the campus in the aftermath of the 1971 Sylmar earthquake. Absolutely true. That was the beginning of Los Angeles County becoming the nation's capital of veteran homelessness, when there was a total lie, provable in fact, that the Sylmar earthquake had damaged a bunch of buildings at the National Soldiers' Home, that it did not. The engineering reports prove that. The federal government and the county engineers did. That was some other type of bogus commission that UCLA was behind to go take those buildings and start putting more hazardous research in them until they were suspended. This Powers v. McDonald lawsuit is doing something that has been tried many times too in the past. And that is based on a lie that the home for disabled soldiers never reopened, or that ever since the Sylmar earthquake, it stopped being a home. That's not true. It still is a home. not only by law, by deeds, but it still even operates as a home. The problem is it's only operating as a home on half its cylinders for way less disabled and formerly homeless veterans than it needs to be. But the reason that they are trying to lie and technically say that it ceased being a home is because there's something in the law regarding something called a charitable trust, that if you can say that something ceases to be what it's supposed to be, fully, wholly, totally ceases to be that, then it can be returned to the donors. And these bogus donors from the Bandinis, the Berries, all these families that have even some of them made deals with law firms like a Melviny and Myers in the 60s for the future opportunity of maybe getting the land back. They've been trying to use this charitable trust thing to sue their way into getting the land that their supposed ancestors from 136 years ago had donated so they could turn around and sell it and make a shit ton of money, billions of dollars. And Judge Carter, the incapable, corrupt Judge Carter, has said that he has ruled that it is a charitable trust, and now that type of activity can be opened for those lawsuits. It's not a charitable trust, by the way, it's a public trust. Charitable trust is something that is for private purposes. So anyway, that is why you have this strategy, right? Because it sounds good, like you have ceased to provide this for what it's supposed to, and now it should be returned to the people who care. Well, yeah, but they don't care, and it's illegal. And you're using a lie to get there. In 2011, veterans filed a lawsuit alleging those leases were illegal and that the VA was failing its duty to provide housing for veterans. It reached a settlement in 2015 requiring it to develop a master plan for the campus. First sentence is true. The veterans won. The second sentence is a total fucking lie. And that is the root and the beginning of the current criminal racket stealing the home. There was never a true settlement of Valentini v. Shinseki. You don't settle a case you've already won. There is no settlement agreement acknowledged by the Valentini court. And we have many of the plaintiffs in the case stating that it is absolute bullshit. They never settled that case. And now we even have Mark Rosenbaum, the lead attorney in the case, on tape twice. You've only heard one of them, admitting that the settlement doesn't exist, that it was just a piece of paper waved around. There's a bunch of bullshit. And the master plan, the real one, was the one VA was already working on, not to rent things to homeless veterans who can't afford them, but just to build and renovate and give them their damn home, finally, instead of death. It was in the course of gathering comments from the veterans that Shriver, who raised philanthropic money to conduct his master plan, learned of the power of veterans' common experience. Shriver doesn't know shit about the power of veterans' common experience. I mean, I wish he was on here because, hey, Bob, what's the power of veterans' common experience? You know, like I don't even know what to say about this guy. I mean, he's like Snagglepuss or something, you know? Because in the course of gathering comments from veterans, that Shriver, who raised philanthropic money, I don't even know about philanthropic money he raised. I mean, I think that they see a couple of dollars that they maybe put in, you know, as blood money to try to pull off a fraud as an investment. I don't think that's philanthropic. I don't think that's anything good. And it says to conduct a master plan. Well, if he's talking about the master plan to get rid of the real master plan, then fine. He says, if you talk to enough veterans, you'll see that veteran energy is a real thing. Here he goes back into Sedona world, right? If you talk to enough veterans, you'll see that veteran energy is a real thing, Shriver said. Their thinking was, if I could stay at the Hyatt or the Veterans Hotel, I'll stay at the Veterans Hotel. It has a good vibe, as the music people say. I mean, the only thing I get from this is like, dude, he's totally high. You know, like, if you talk to enough veterans, you'll see that veteran energy is a real thing. Is that surprising to him? Yeah, veteran energy is a real thing. The veterans community is a real thing. It's a real thing that he knows nothing about, that I know a little bit about, that veterans know everything about. And whatever he says after that, stay at the Hyatt or the veterans, I don't even care. All I care about is their home, housing homeless veterans. You know, the National Soldiers Home is not the Hyatt or the Veterans Hotel W or whatever they want it to be with a bar. To ensure the veterans' voices were heard, Shriver filed about 1,000 comments to the National Register. Yes, instead of veterans, Shriver filed about 1,000 comments to the National Register. As far as I can tell, most of them are not from veterans. This hotel could be the crown jewel of the campus. Well, there you go. I agree. that he believes that. Nothing else to say there. Um, anyway, the VA, Shriver now says, didn't listen because they shouldn't. Shriver and Allman now contend that the VA simply set aside the 2016 draft master plan and instead deferred to the Veterans Collective to draw up its own plans. That's true. Corrupt Secretary of the VA, Dennis McDonough, did somehow become unduly influenced to say, go do whatever the fuck you want. The North Campus draft community plan. That's true. Not the master plan, the community plan, something that no law asks for. The law never asked for a community plan. Urged by the Oversight Board to seek an outside opinion, VA Secretary Dennis McDonough acquiesced and retained Urban Land Institute to field a panel of experts to make recommendations. VA Secretary Dennis McDonough absolutely acquiesced. I'd say he actually capitulated and failed at his job to allow this shit to even get this far. That's why he should be the fuck out of his office by tomorrow. Urged by the Oversight Board to seek an outside opinion, if they wanted an outside opinion, why did they hire the ULI Institute that people like Robert Begland and all these people are already involved with? I mean, the Urban Land Institute is basically like a special interest group of real estate developers. I mean, how is that an outside independent opinion? And who cares? The law is the law. It is a home for disabled and homeless veterans. Who the fuck cares about the ULI? The panel of experts also took issue with the plan to put veteran business on the first floor, supportive housing, and not concentrate them in a more conventional business district. That's a fancy way of saying we don't even want one veteran in this gigantic commercial retail district that we want to build in time for the Olympics. They're spreading it like peanut butter across the base of their buildings. Think about that. Think about that. Let's go back to this again. The panel of experts also took issue with the plan to put veteran businesses on the first floor supportive housing buildings. In other words, they took an issue with having any veterans living in the buildings. In other words, they called it veterans housed at their soldiers' home, something like spreading peanut butter across the buildings, something like squishing filth across the buildings they want to steal. You know, this is why it's good to have dipshits run these types of rackets, because they say stupid things that they don't realize how stupid they are until they've already said them. In June, the Oversight Board unanimously asked the VA Secretary to direct staff members to separate the town center from the master plan, not allow supportive housing in it, and issue a request for proposals to develop it. Let's call that the anti-peanut butter plan. Allowing supportive housing within the town center would compromise both the privacy of the residences for our veterans and open up the public gathering place feel for the overall community of veterans whom it serves. Yeah, they're so concerned about the privacy for veterans that they want to build a fucking mega mall there, right? That's how concerned about the privacy they are. The West Los Angeles campus should be woven into the cultural fabric of this city, said Allman, who no longer sits on the board, thank God. I've always viewed the town center concept as an exercise, and I'm not going to read it because it's such trash. Who cares what he's always viewed it as, right? All I know is the cultural fabric of the National Soldiers Home is disabled, homeless veteran residents properly served by the federal government. That is the only cultural fabric, period.
Wow. I really appreciate you going through this. I did
I
want
appreciate it
to,
too.
and again, as if anyone's joining us, this will be the first of many streams dedicated to the Soldiers Home at the West Los Angeles VA. I wanted to bring up. We talked about this ULI real quick. There was a website, Draft Master Plan, something another. I could pull it up, but when you click on it, it brings you to a link and it mentions people like stakeholders. Is there anything to mention regarding people calling themselves stakeholders that aren't homeless, unemployed veterans?
I
Regarding
have a
this
lot
ULI
of I have a
report.
lot of opinions about it, but personally, the current way I feel is it doesn't matter anymore. It's not even worth looking at. You know, like I think the best thing that anybody can do today to respect the law and ethics is to no longer even listen to shit like this or even look at it and just say, get the fuck off disabled and homeless veterans home.
Right.
Because I mean, these are just people that are supposedly saying that the way you serve disabled and homeless veterans is by stealing their home and building a mega mall for the general public on it. Some of
Right.
these people even said that we're assholes that are totally batshit crazy and that everything we say is a big lie and they can't tell us why. Um, and now is all being admitted in piecemeal, uh, spoon-fed, propagandistic ways.
Yep.
That's even eroding the integrity of our federal court judiciary now.
I'd like to read a couple comments. Um, just realized that didn't go. A couple comments. Axel Foley actually mentioned that he was living on Veterans Row. Um, he mentioned that there was community there, and yeah, here I'll read it. I was the happiest I've been in years on Vets Row. I had found my tribe. HUD vouchers ruined it. Um, and a lot of people were saying thank you for sharing. Uh,
Thank you for the
uh,
opportunity.
yeah, Roofless mentioned disabled people tend to like to be on the ground level. Elevators break in SRO buildings. For months, I
I've
see
seen that.
this in HHH, PSH projects. Often they want to take up the ground level with businesses. I thought that was an interesting comment. There is
Absolutely.
yeah, go ahead if you wanted.
Absolutely. That's a very good point, right? They're even saying, let's put disabled veterans up on higher floors so shoppers can come into this illegal development below their home more easily.
I mean, that's unbelievable. Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's not something
Yeah, I never even I never I had overlooked that. That's actually yet another just despicable thing.
absolutely.
And
And I
as
go ahead.
for Veterans Row, it's really fucking sad that there was a Veterans Row right next to those people's home. Um, but it does go to show, as they say, uh, because it simply had the ingredient of disabled homeless veterans, that's all that was needed for a community. The only thing required to improve that community is for them to have been given their home that they earned. That's not a handout. That's, hey, I'm going to go risk my life for almost no money and like get disabled doing it. And I was promised this before I even signed up to do that job.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I don't think, and maybe it was myself before even getting into this. I don't think I realized that uh, to serve, you have to be 100%. I mean, right? It's like there's really ideally nothing wrong with you physically, mentally to go serve. And that when you come back and are impacted, uh, for whatever various reasons, it's
Right.
solely
Service connected disability.
right.
Right.
Um, Francisco mentions they say they have the right to mitigate open space. He quoted right to mitigate open space. He says there is no negotiating a law that is established by Congress in perpetuity. Um, I'd like to play this clip here because
Yep.
I think
I'm
it's
typically while you do
relevant.
that.
It's a 50-second clip. Okay, no problem. I'll let me see here. Okay. Yeah, I'll play this clip. And then if anyone is watching, again, this is the first stream of many. Uh, we appreciate your comments. We appreciate your feedback. We appreciate the questions, you sharing this, engaging with the post, hitting the thumbs up, texting it, emailing it, messaging it. We are live right now, by the way, on YouTube. We are live on Kick, Twitch, and X. We are streaming to, it says here, 263 people in real time. There will, of course, be more people that watch and view this. Your feedback, your questions, your support, your viewership is necessary. And we're going to watch this clip, and then would love Ryan's feedback. Got the cat talking in the background. Here we go.
Identified this challenge to raise those limits in some cases so we can meet the needs of our veterans.
Not hearing audio.
If the Thomas Saffron lease is not...
You're not?
I'm not, but I don't know if other people are.
Okay. Let me and know in the comments. It's the video, by the way, of me saying Thomas Saffron lease is 20 years, but the HUD-VASH contract, I think I say, is 99 years. And then I ask about the town center. It's a 50-second clip, or 40 seconds. So I'm just going to play it. If you can't hear it, by the way, and you're in the chat, if you see this video going and you cannot hear it, please let me know in the chat. I will fix something that's potentially not letting it play audio.
99 years, what would happen after the 20-year contract with HUD-VASH expires?
I don't know.
The contract with Thomas Saffron, the enhanced use lease, is for 99 years, but the HUD-VASH vouchers contract is 20 years. So my question is, after 20 years, what would occur?
I don't know.
Is there a plan for a mega mall or town center?
There's part of the master plan, and you can refer to that. I know you're familiar with where to find that. Is a plan for a town center. There's no plan for a mega mall.
All right, we're wrapping it up.
So they say they don't know anything about the 20 years and the 99 years. I ask about, I suppose I say a mega mall town center. He says, I have no idea about a mega mall, but the town center in accordance with the master plan. Something of that nature. Which was at a press conference for one of these new buildings where I don't think the word town center, specifically when the media was present, was ever being mentioned. Maybe it was being discussed in those VCOEB meetings that they were denying advocates and veterans, homeless, unemployed veterans, disabled veterans who even lived on the property from entering, listening, which I think is concerning.
Sorry, now, was that heard, though? Because I couldn't hear the audio on that.
Let's see. I believe it was heard by the public.
I already know what it says, so I don't have to hear it, but...
Yeah. You recall which one it is with John Kuhn, Tanya Brown?
Sorry, is this the one where they talk about the splitting up the floors or something else?
No, it's where the three of them are standing outside.
What are they saying in this one again?
I was asking if there was 20. I was asking about the HUD-VASH. I was asking what happens when 20 years ends of the 99-year lease, when 20 years HUD-VASH contract
this is one where they're like, I don't know.
Right. And then I followed up with what's up with the, mega mall. And they are like looking like they have no idea what's going on.
Right. They're looking like they're paid to have no idea what's going on. But the 20 years is something really important that is a huge scheme with this EUL fiasco layer that's been laid on top of the soldiers' home that's already funded for disabled homeless veterans to be there without it. And that is, they have set this thing up through all these illegal agreements to constrain, illegally, to constrain those buildings, wherever the EULs are, from being a home for even veterans anymore, having to be, because after 20 years, because the HUD-VASH, if you look at the federal law, you can't have a HUD-VASH programming running for more than 20 years on a particular project or property. But the leases are 99 years. The illegal EULs are 99 years. But the HUD-VASH project term is 20. And I mean, if you talk to residents, I don't even know if these people are willing to even let it last the 20 years they're hoping everyone forgets that by. I mean, I feel like they can barely even try to operate these buildings and anyone can live in them for more than 5 years.
Right.
That would include retail, though, right?
I'm not aware of any plans at the moment for any retail centers.
Okay.
Wow, wait, so I just let it play the clip, by the way. My apologies, but I'm going to just play this last 10 seconds real quick. Hold on, because this is unbelievable now in hindsight.
That would include retail, though, right?
So let me go back a little
And
more.
you can refer to that in your
Center, and do it for a mega mall or town center.
There's part of the master plan, and you can refer to that. I know you're familiar with where to find that. Is a plan for a town center. There's no plan for a mega mall.
He goes, there is a plan for a town center. There is no plan for a mega mall. And then I follow it up.
All right, we're wrapping it up. Thank you.
That would include retail, though, right?
I say, that would include retail, though, right? And his response,
I'm not aware of any plans at the moment for any retail centers.
I am not aware of any plans at the moment for any retail.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then
he's
they
a
thank
liar.
me.
That's a
And then
proven
someone
lie.
says he's a liar in the back, which was interesting.
Because he is. Yeah, let's kind of go over the town center thing, not a mega mall versus town center thing. To make
Is there
sure
anything you'd like me to pull up, by the way, that even like in the ULI report?
I don't know
or
if well, I
anything?
emailed. Did you ever get any emails I sent you? Pictures?
Let me take a quick look while you. Would it have been
And I'm
recent
trying to find
emails?
this too while you're at it.
Recent emails like tonight, like.
Yeah, tonight.
Okay, so yeah, let's see. I do have. Yeah, I have all this. So let me.
Okay, do you have like one of those ULI report covers that talk about town center with a big picture of what a town center is according to the ULI?
The dollar sign, or no?
No,
Is it-
the
oh.
one of the one
What
of
is
like
a
the
town
actual-
center in red with like
Yeah, let's
yellow
throw that out.
highlights? Okay,
Yeah.
so let me see how quick I can do this. I appreciate everyone for tuning in, hanging in there as we do these streams. This is the first stream of many. Let me save it, open file, and then I'm just going to do a quick window capture here. Photos, should be that one.
I'm just trying to find stuff too, just in case.
Let me see. Image. Okay, here we go. Image 2. Share. Boom.
There we go.
browse.
Oh, that doesn't have it though.
There we go. I got this up. I hope this was
Yeah, that's one thing, but I'm trying to find the other one.
okay.
This
Let's see
one. Not that one.
if-
Maybe I forgot to put it.
is it green
I haven't-
background? Program highlight veteran
No,
hotel.
I know. I finally know where to find this relatively quickly. Here we go. So here it is.
If I could download all these attachments in one stroke.
Maybe not.
Okay, there's something I could do. I could get this up, I think. Here, let me so
It's
No.
it's a big picture
Here-
of people standing at whatever this town center thing is.
here, look. Am I at the can you look at the screen real quick?
Yeah, I thought I sent it to you in those, but I didn't. Darn, why am I having such trouble finding this right now? One more time in my pictures. Or actually, I know how to do this. I think. Keep saying that, but downloads ULI tab report.
Oops.
So sorry about this.
Oh, no. We're both we're
Winging it.
Yeah, we're winging it.
Just want to. It's important to show this.
And I think we're I'll read some comments. Let's see. Axel Foley said, so wow, I have an expiration date on my HUD VASH. Francisco Juarez, 79 years to do what? Question mark. Roofless. The average amount of time a family keeps a Section 8 voucher is between 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, and the HUD VASH vouchers are good for what? 2 years?
He shouldn't.
1 or 2 years?
Francisco, 450,000 square foot town center will be open to the public. That is repurposing, another form of theft. Land for 99 years. What's up, Buddy Head? I see Buddy Head join. Thank you for tuning in here. We are doing our first of many, the first of many live streams. This one's dedicated and focused on the West Los Angeles VA, the Soldiers Home. We're thankful to have Ryan Thompson, the NHD VS advocate. And we've been going over since really the original thing that we've been discussing is the LA Times article that talked about a bar, hotel, town center, and was pretty gross, I got to tell you. Ooh, I appreciate you. Yep, thank you. Please share it in the Discord. Yes, we are live on Twitch. We're actually live on Kick, YouTube, and X. We are currently live to over 260 people, and it's actually been growing since we've started. So I think that's a good sign that there's an appetite for this information that we're discussing.
Yeah, and I can't find the image I wanted to show, but in the meantime.
Is there anything in the images I have pulled up? Can you see the screen?
No, but I do want to show something else here. Look at these images right here. I see here.
Do you want to text me it or email that to me real quick?
Will it work if I text?
Yeah, I'm sorry, email it. Email it to me.
Yeah, my email's doing something weird right now, unfortunately.
Okay,
actually, let's just look at the ones I emailed you. So in the emails here, you got. Yeah, so let's look at the email that starts with that one. Yeah, so let's look at the first one, first image, which is from the court, right? So this is a court filing by a supposed attorney for homeless disabled veterans in the Powers v. McDonald lawsuit, dated April Fool's Day, 2024, saying that former LAPD commissioner, mega mall developer, non-veteran, Weingart Foundation chair, trustee, board director, Steven Soberoff, is hereby an expert witness who will replace disabled and homeless veterans' voice in their lawsuit. I mean, there's nothing. There's nothing to go on here on how this could ever be ethical. And if you scroll down, it says town center village concept and open space needs. He says it is insufficient to simply build housing on the property. Members of any community should be expected to find something here. Shops, restaurants, recreational facilities, parks, and open space. Okay, this is what they're saying is who should be talking, who should be the voice of disabled homeless veterans in this lawsuit instead of disabled homeless veterans, right? And then you have some stuff here from the ULI report. There's a page of the ULI report called Creating Consensus. Well, yeah, that's an image from a different ULI report, but it shows what they mean by town centers generating a bunch of money for private business interests. That's from the Federal Register of hiring the ULI.
Oh, here's
right there,
Creating
Consensus, right? This is the ULI report. It's talking about how do you basically manufacture fake support for something like this, right? Well, the developer, the local government, citizens, and tenants, they'll share the fruits of their success, whatever that means. The task of building consensus is often undertaken by a leader who acts as a champion for the project. The leader may be a public official, the developer, or a key person in the community, not a veteran. Having a champion who believes that the outcome will benefit the community helps with the creation of the vision as well as the project implementation. What they're saying here is the plan is let's come up with one person representing the community at large that can even be a developer that will become the top of the pyramidal voice of what every disabled and homeless veteran's interest will be, but obviously have nothing to do with. There's this image that comes from, what is a town center? It's anchored by retail, dining, and leisure uses, office hospitality. It'll evolve into the densest, most compact community with connections to its surroundings, Brentwood, Westwood, West LA, right? Look at the image below, this concept map. Look at this map. I mean, do we understand what this is? Zoom out of it a little bit. Maybe mouse wheel back if you have a mouse wheel, or make the window bigger. Or just scroll up and down on it so you can, yeah. This is, what they did here is they took all of the acres of the soldiers' home that haven't been stolen yet, right? That's what this border is. And then they put a big green cutout for Brentwood School and a golf course that they don't want anyone to consider that anymore. And they're saying, yeah, all that shit is basically a town center.
Wow.
That's not 90,000 square feet.
Wow.
It's disgusting. Look 2 images down. From their community plan. Keep going down. So this is their overlay of like the beginning of the core of this mega mall. Look at all those buildings. Look at all that land that they want to take and turn into the first phase of a total massive theft of the rest of this land at the federal taxpayer's dime. Then they go to the next one. Hey, why don't we take this big ass building and make it a hotel, a veteran hotel, right? It was called the Veterans Purple Line at first. Now it's called the Purple Line, right? The Veterans Baseball Field, now called the UCLA Baseball Field, right? Veterans Parking Lot, now called the parking lot. The Veterans Hotel, now called the hotel. So, this is their own shit. And then you have these dopes walking around saying that they're leaders under an oath to care for those who bore the battle. And they're going, I didn't know that line, when they're bought off to support a town center. And it makes sense too, right? Because Deputy VA Secretary Tanya Bradshaw has spent most of her career working for like the NSA in communications, right? So, I mean, this is someone who specializes in types of communications that are more appropriate when you're dealing with foreign adversaries in other countries in terms of international conflicts, not when you're dealing with having to care for those who bore the battle domestically on your own land.
Wow. Francisco mentioned, why was the VSO oversight removed by Robert McHenrick? And then in parentheses,
I wish we had Francisco in this. We should do this next time.
We definitely can.
So what he's talking about is there used to be as with many things, right? Because the veterans' voice has been systematically removed from every single aspect of that home's operation. And back in 2019, there was a long-standing quarterly meeting, I think it was, that was a meeting of local Congressional Veteran Service Organization leaders and public officials, elected officials. So at that time, it would be like, Ted Lieu, Sheila Kuehl, Brad Sherman, these types of folks would meet quarterly in person at the soldiers' home with 6th floor VA-GLHS officials and leaders in the Congressionally Chartered Veterans Service Organization community, including AMVETS, unfortunately not including American GI Forum, at least not legitimately at the time, American Legion, VFW. And one day, Robert McKendrick, who's now working for Concourse Federal, but at that time was a so-called director at VA-GLHS, simply announced, we're just not doing that meeting anymore. After it happening for years. I was like, that was probably the last thing that was the only remaining, voice of the veterans regarding that land from a policymaking standpoint. And my understanding from several sources that I believe are credible is that Ted Lieu didn't want to do it, want to get rid of it, and for good reason, in terms of what he's been up to at that time. So they just canceled that out.
Wow. Axel Foley, who mentioned they were on living on Veterans Row, and actually CTRS as well at one point, mentioned their concern that the veterans won't be welcomed at a town center.
Of course not. Of course not.
Roofless.
Yeah.
No, right.
Yeah. It is absolutely not for veterans, disabled homeless veterans, the stakeholders of the land. That's the whole point. You know, they are just using the last drop of life out of veterans at a time of homelessness while disabled to exploit their last drop of an odds to survive to pull off a giant fraud. That's why this is so gross. And that is also why, ironically, why this land grab as it falls is going to do everything it can, no matter how nasty it is, to try to skirt this, because it knows what it's going to look like when public awareness hits of the truth of this. But too bad, they earned it. You know, like these folks, it is not for, like, is Brentwood School for veterans, disabled homeless veterans? Is the baseball theft for disabled homeless veterans? Are all the mansions below the Getty, north of Sunset Boulevard there, for disabled homeless veterans? A lot of people don't know that that's the Soldiers Home, right? No. Whatever they take upon a lie, a deadly lie that has caused Los Angeles County, literally the difference between Los Angeles being or not being our national capital of veteran homelessness is this land fraud. This one. And this fraud has been cruelly and unusually punishing disabled homeless veterans and defrauding every level of taxpayer in this country for decades, often upon the premise of, look, why can't these disabled homeless veterans just compromise? There's always a compromise that they ask for. Let's be reasonable, just compromise. Let's be reasonable and just have only the disabled veterans who are the only stakeholders of this land compromise. There's been 70 something years of compromise. This land grab has never compromised ever. Ever. And where are we at after all this compromise? We are now at the point where even the public integrity of the federal judiciary system in the Ninth Circuit is now even falling like a cliff eroding in the ocean. Like, this can't keep going on, you know? And I think the public awareness is there, but there's only one way to solve this, in my personal opinion. And I derive that opinion by looking at the law and looking at the damage done and looking at the apparent intent of the land grab. The only way to solve this is criminal justice. You can't fit a square peg in a round hole. You can't take criminals and try to deal with them in a civil court. It's not made for criminals. It's made for business disputes. This isn't a business. It's about theft. It's about death. It's about homelessness. And it's about fraud. So the only way to solve this, trust me, you start sending a few of these racketeers to the tiny homes that they really do deserve in a federal penitentiary, except with a toilet and a sink. You will see this land grab shut the fuck up and get the fuck out as fast as they can, because they do care about that. Anyone who cares, no matter whether it's true or not, about looking really wealthy and looking really important, definitely doesn't want to look like they're in prison for 20 years. And if they've earned it, that's where they need to go. It's long overdue.
I certainly agree. Well, I think this is a very knowledgeable, informative first stream. There's definitely a couple more comments. One is Roofless wrote, just like the voice of the unhoused in Skid Row was removed from LA Alliance or never existed to begin with, Judge Carter has a plaintiff problem. I think she also mentioned in a previous comment that Judge Carter's I think she WC alum might have been mentioned here.
Yeah.
And Roofless also made a comment that said, what are your thoughts on CalVets, LA County Veterans Advisory Commission, AMVA, House Committee on VA, VCOEB, LACBA, etc.? She was wondering thoughts on those.
VCOEB we've talked about quite a bit.
Yeah.
So there's information on in terms of my own personal opinion on that. As for LA County Veterans Commission or what advisory commission or whatever, I believe that lacks ethics and has just been one of many pundit groups for the land theft. Actually, something interesting to say about that, right? It's not always readily apparent why are so many folks representing LA County as public officials and LA City and the state of California as public officials promoting this land fraud. And the answer to that is, first of all, as a prerequisite, first get in your mind and think about the fiscal troubles that the state, the county, and the city are in right now. Of all the homeless money that's disappeared, that hasn't done nearly anything of what it said it's supposed to, and how angry people are about it, and how the city council is, rapidly and not even done being criminally convicted and going to prison. And I guarantee you, absolutely, these convictions are going to continue going on. We're going to see more of them. So keep in mind, there's a lot of pressure right now of a lot of folks at these levels of governments trying to delay and figure out what the hell they're going to do about all this money that went missing. And sometimes it's not even missing. They just failed to tell the public that they issued a bunch of bonds, a couple decades ago to build some stuff that they never did, and that money went missing. And everything they said they're doing to build housing after that is really just bonds to pay off the old bonds. That's the case of California to a great extent. Well, if you suddenly have a bunch of buildings under illegal enhanced use leases that suddenly are laundered to pretend like they're under county jurisdiction, and then you add a gigantic megamall metropolis to that you then say is suddenly laundered under county city jurisdiction, you suddenly have a gigantic illegal tax generation revenue epicenter. And so that's why you have a lot of folks who are corrupt in the county and the state and the city praying to God, like a demonic God, I guess, for this thing to be built off the backs of disabled homeless veterans' lives and taxpayers' stolen general welfare, to come up with that tax money from those retail sales, from those assessments, right? And to make sure it's done by the Olympics to kick it off with a shit ton of business. Because they're looking for that as the Peter, as the Paul to rob to pay off the Peter that they robbed before. So that's where that comes from, and that's why I think what is motivating a lot of that bogus County Veterans Advisory Commission group. But even if, let's say, the County Veterans Advisory Commission group and these groups in the county and the city and the state, and CalVets, let's just say, suspending disbelief, let's say they're perfect. There's nothing wrong with them. They're operating 100% full ethics in accordance with the law. When it comes to the National Soldiers Home, who cares anyway? It's the federal government's jurisdiction. So even in that case, it wouldn't matter. And as for the, what were some of the other groups? Sorry. There was one more. Oh, CalVets. Sorry, CalVets. CalVets has, in my opinion, is just a land laundering scheme. Think about this. You take National Soldiers Home land, right? Federal jurisdiction, Soldiers Home land, already budgeted to house disabled homeless veterans, already budgeted to do renovations and improve buildings and stuff there for disabled homeless veterans. and you take a big chunk of it and you give it an illegal quitclaim deed to the state to put a CalVets facility there and have the state of California on top of all that supposedly provide housing for disabled homeless veterans, but instead becomes a retirement home for veterans who pay for it at best. And and then, by the way, CalVets is all federal funded. CalVets acts like it's, taking state taxpayer money and running something basically as a state operation off state financing, but it's bullshit. That's when Gavin Newsom went up a long time ago about when they were trying to close down the Loma Linda, I forget whatever CalVets it is. And he's standing there looking at the public and telling them, we just don't have the budget. You can't keep operating CalVets, with the budget. We don't have the money. It's like, dude, what the fuck are you talking about? You're getting all the money from the federal government to run it how it's supposed to be run. You don't have to worry about state money. It's just them coming up with bullshit. So no, I don't think my personal opinion is there should not be any additional layer of something that just doesn't have even jurisdiction to be there to do something that's already paid for that they're not supposed to be doing, that something else is supposed to be doing, especially when 100% of the time over decades, not a single one of these additional layers on top of this have ever fulfilled their promise or done their job.
Yeah, that's I would agree with all of that. My personal experience with most of those entities has been either negative or one where I found they are trying to silence like advocates and or the disabled homeless veterans living on the property, whether it was the VCOEB. I've seen some stuff from CalVets even to some degree. So that's definitely strange. Is there anything else you want to mention, share, or bring up until our next stream that we do?
Nothing other than I'm so thankful that we had an opportunity to do this. I wish we did it before now. I'm really glad that this is happening, and I would really love if Francisco could be on the next one.
I hope so. Absolutely. And I think he's still in the chat. He's definitely been commenting. I clicked on this, but it's not loading. I went to, I was just going to mention, if people are still wanting to look up more, listen to more, there's some interviews and things like that at mrcheckpoint.com. And there's a tab, West LA VA. And there is a lot of different videos, interviews. The very first one, West LA VA Soldiers Home Interview Must Listen. That's, in my opinion, got a lot of stuff that would be worth checking out. And the other link I'll mention real quick before I hop off, and this only works if you're on a phone. iPhone, it does work best. Android, it typically works, but I've heard it may have a couple issues. And veteranhomeless.com. It brings you to a link tree, or it should. And veteranhomeless.com. Let's see. That's weird. That's interesting. It's supposed to bring you to this link tree. So if you go to Linktree, linktr.ee/endveteranhomeless, there's a link at the top of here, email to save the soldiers home. And when you click that on your phone, your iPhone, it will open up your browser. It has like 99 emails. It has a petition, and you can just click send. So that's a link tree. It typically works if you go to End Veteran Homeless, but I'm not sure. So we'll check into that. Other than that, as I said, this is the first stream of many. Thank you so much, Ryan. We'll make sure that this stays live. So this will stay live on YouTube, on Kick and X. So if you're on any of those platforms and want to share it, you easily can. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, Ryan, do you want to share how someone might be able to do that if you'd like, or totally up to you?
Yeah, although it'll be a temporary email, just because I have to fix some billing issues with my Gmail. So let's see, is there a chat here?
I could type it in or
just stick it in because it's hard to spell.
No worries. Go ahead. I'll write it in. You want to type it to me or tell me? You want to say it?
I just put it in Gorilla Rye. Oh, it's just me. Yeah, I just sent it to you in the chat.
Okay, let me look for that chat. Oh, I see it. Okay, so I'm actually gonna
That'll go
drop.
back to my other email, but for now, that's the one to use.
I'm gonna drop this in the chat that everyone could see. At least I'm trying to. I'll do it again. I'll just GUERILLARY at iCloud.com. GUERILLARY at iCloud.com. Awesome.
Yep.
So that is Ryan Thompson's email address. You're more than welcome to reach out to him directly. A lot of people are saying thank you, by the way. Thanks for the conversation. The
Thank
truth
you. I'm
will
so
set
glad
us
there's
free.
people here listening. So,
286 watching.
I had no idea about that.
Yeah,
Wow.
we're live streaming on a bunch of platforms, and that's the real time viewership. And so it certainly will likely get more once we end it, and people can share it, and appreciate it. So we'll end the stream here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Peace. Until next time, set the alerts. By the way, if you're watching this on any app, set the alert and you will get a notification the next time we go live. I'll try to share more so you can let others know when we go live. And as said many times, this is the first of many. Thanks a lot. Bye.